The crash had turned night into fire. Captain Daniel Reeves woke up to the smell of burning metal and the sharp hiss of leaking air. The transport ship Aurora Run had gone down fast, too fast for the crew to eject. Now there was only silence, broken by sparks and the distant crack of thunder from Row 7's thick jungle storms. He dragged himself out from under a broken beam, his leg cut and suit torn. Smoke filled the wreckage, glowing orange from the flames. The sky above was dark green. This moon had no sun, only the light of gas clouds that shimmered like ghosts. His visor display flickered weakly. Oxygen low, life signs, none detected. Everyone else was gone. Daniel stumbled over twisted steel and blackened seats. He had fought in many battles, seen men fall and ships burn, but the emptiness after the crash felt different. This was not war. This was survival. He turned on his beacon to scan for survivors one last time. The faint sound of a voice, soft, distant, not human, reached his ears. He froze. The sound came again, higher this time, almost a whisper. He followed it, pushing aside panels and burnt cables until he reached a cracked cryopod half buried under wreckage. Inside was something small and pale silver. A girl, not more than 16 by human standards, with thin lines of blue light tracing across her skin. Her left arm was missing from the shoulder, and her body trembled as she gasped for breath. She was not human. Her eyes were bright like liquid mercury. The pod's display showed alien symbols he didn't recognize, but one line blinked red. Life support failing. Daniel hesitated. The Galactic Council had ordered humans to avoid unauthorized species. The war between humans and the Vashani Empire had ended only months ago, leaving deep scars. Helping her could mean treason. But she was dying, and she was just a child. He tore off his emergency pack and used the med foam on her wound. She cried out softly, not in fear but in pain. He kept his voice calm. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt you." Of course she couldn't understand him. Yet when his hand brushed hers, she clung to it weakly as if she could feel his promise. He found a small shelter under the wing of the wreck and dragged her there. He used the ship's fragments to build a cover against rain. He started a small fire from fuel cells and wrapped her in a thermal sheet. Her breathing steadied, and for the first time her eyes opened fully. She looked at him, a stranger, a human soldier, but didn't pull away. He spoke slowly, trying to use the few alien words stored in his translator. "Safe. Rest." She blinked, then whispered something faint like a name. The translator struggled, then displayed a single word. "Lyra." Daniel repeated it softly. "Lyra, okay, I'm Daniel." She watched him carefully, her eyes reflecting the flicker of fire. It was hard to tell what she thought. Fear, maybe confusion, but there was also a quiet spark of trust forming between them. A fragile thread neither of them fully understood. That night, rain fell in heavy sheets. Daniel stayed awake, keeping the fire alive. Lyra slept beside the warm metal wall, breathing shallow but steady. Every time thunder rolled, she stirred and muttered in her own tongue. He didn't understand the words, but her voice carried sadness, the kind born from betrayal. By morning, the rain had stopped. Daniel checked the horizon. Nothing but dense jungle and broken machinery scattered for miles. His radio was dead, his beacon damaged. He was truly alone. He spent the next 2 days scavenging for supplies. The jungle of Row 7 was alive with strange sounds, chittering insects, glowing plants, and creatures that watched from the trees. Daniel moved carefully, bringing back fruit that his scanner said was safe. He cooked what he could over the fire. Lyra was too weak to eat much, but she smiled faintly when he offered her water. Bit by bit, he repaired her pod's translator, using spare chips from his broken suit. By the third day, she could understand fragments of his speech. Her voice was soft but clear. "You help me." "Why?" he thought for a moment. "Because you needed it." She looked puzzled. "Humans. Not help Vashani. War." "I'm not fighting anymore," he said quietly. "War's over for me." She was silent for a long time, then whispered, "They hurt me. Humans, Vashani, both." Daniel frowned. He didn't ask right away. But later, when she slept, he searched through the pod's memory. It contained logs of an illegal experiment, hybrid research combining human DNA with Vashani biotech. Lyra had been one of many. Her own people had sold her to a human science group that wanted to create perfect soldiers. When the project collapsed, she was abandoned and shipped away to be disposed of. Daniel sat beside the fire, his fists clenched. He had served in the Human Defense Corps for 10 years. He had believed they were fighting for justice. But this was cruelty. When dawn came again, Lyra tried to stand but stumbled. Daniel caught her gently. "Slow," he said. "You're still healing," she smiled weakly. "You would stay?" He nodded. "I'll stay." That afternoon, he climbed the ridge to repair his beacon. It took him hours, connecting wires with shaking hands. When he finally turned it on, a bright red light blinked, a distress signal. Rescue would come within a day. He returned to tell Lyra, but she was staring at the beacon with fear. "No," she whispered. "They find me." "Take me back," Daniel hesitated. "They'll help us," she shook her head hard. "No help, prison pain, please." He saw tears in her silver eyes. Her body shook. She had no reason to lie. Her fear was real. He looked at the blinking beacon. It was his only chance to go home, to return to the fleet. Yet when he remembered the pod logs and the pain, the betrayal, something in him changed. He reached down and pressed a button. The beacon's light died. Silence filled the clearing again. Lyra looked up, surprised. "You stop it," Daniel nodded. "Yes. You're safe now." For the first time she smiled. A small, trembling smile that made the long night seem a little brighter. The next days became a rhythm of quiet survival. Daniel built a better shelter using broken ship parts. He taught Lyra simple human words. She told him small things about her world: blue oceans, crystal forests, and songs her people used to sing before the war. Sometimes, when the wind blew softly through the wreck, she hummed one of those tunes. Daniel listened in silence, feeling the weight of guilt lift a little. At night, the stars of Row 7 shone through the clearing. They looked different here, wider, closer, more alive. Lyra sat beside him, her silver skin glowing faintly. "You are far from home," she said. "So are you," he replied. She tilted her head. "Home may be gone, but not alone." Daniel looked at her, then at the fire. The word alone had followed him for years, through every battlefield, every empty station. But now, in this strange jungle, with an alien girl who had lost everything yet still tried to smile, he felt something shift inside him. When he finally lay down to rest, he whispered quietly, "I won't leave you broken, Lyra, not now. Not ever." The jungle wind carried his words into the dark. Above them, far beyond the clouds, the stars burned brighter, as if listening. And for the first time since the crash, Daniel Reeves closed his eyes, not as a soldier, but as someone who had found a reason to keep going. Days turned into weeks on Row 7. The jungle around the crash site grew quieter as the fires died, but Daniel knew they couldn't stay forever. Food was running low and the storms were getting worse. He also noticed strange lights in the sky, patrol drones from both the Human Command and the Vishani Empire. If either side found them, Lyra would be taken and he would be punished for helping her. Every morning, Daniel repaired parts of the wreck using whatever he could salvage. The ship's main engines were gone, but the auxiliary thruster pods were still partly intact. He planned to rebuild a small craft enough to escape orbit and reach one of the outer colonies where scanners rarely searched. Lyra helped him as much as her healing body allowed. The biotech in her veins was slowly repairing her missing arm, growing thin layers of silver-blue metal that shimmered in sunlight. Sometimes Daniel caught her looking at it with quiet sadness. "It remembers," she once said softly. "Every pain it felt." He didn't know how to answer that, so he just nodded and said, "Then we'll give it something better to remember." They worked side by side through long days of heat and rain. The bond between them deepened in silence more than in words. Daniel taught her how to use human tools, how to fit bolts and seal panels. She was quick to learn, though sometimes she laughed at how clumsy his big hands looked compared to her graceful fingers. One evening, while Daniel searched for spare power cells near the wreck, he noticed a faint blinking light under the mud. When he dug it up, his heart sank. It was a locator beacon. Someone had already picked up the Aurora Run's crash signal before he disabled his. That meant rescue teams or hunters were coming. He rushed back to camp. Lyra was sitting near the fire, humming a soft tune. When she saw his face, her smile faded. "They found us?" he nodded. "We have to leave. Now." Together, they gathered what little they owned: food packs, tools, a small water purifier, and loaded them into the half-fixed shuttle Daniel had been working on. The thrusters coughed to life for the first time, shaking the ground beneath them. As dawn painted the jungle gold, they lifted off, rising through mist and smoke. Lyra gripped the seat tightly, her eyes wide. It was her first flight since the experiment ship where she had been imprisoned. Daniel reached over, steadying her hand. "You're safe. I've got you." The shuttle broke through the clouds and the black of space opened around them. For a moment, both just stared at the stars. They were finally free, but freedom was fragile. Within hours, a sensor alarm rang out. 2 small interceptors were approaching fast from opposite directions. One bore human markings. The other flashed Vashani symbols. "Both sides," Daniel muttered. "They're tracking the crash survivors." Lyra's voice trembled. "They will take me back." "Not if I can help it," he said, gripping the controls. The chase began. The shuttle's engines were weak, but Daniel knew how to fly dirty. Hugging asteroid shadows, cutting power to hide from scanners, reigniting thrusters at the last second. Lyra watched the stars streak by, her eyes wide with fear but also trust. When a missile locked on, Daniel rolled the ship sharply and released decoy flares. The explosion shook them hard, throwing sparks through the cabin. "Hold on," he shouted. The Vashani fighter swung around, firing plasma bursts that grazed their hull. Daniel pushed the throttle, but warning lights flared, fuel leaking. He couldn't outrun them. Then Lyra's hand glowed. Her biotech arm, still half-grown, pulsed with light as she pressed it against the control console. Circuits around her merged with the ship's systems. "I can help," she said, voice steady despite the pain in her face. "My body can talk to machines." The shuttle's engines roared to life, stronger than before. It accelerated with impossible speed, darting between asteroids and debris. The pursuing ships fell behind, unable to match the sudden burst. When they finally escaped into dark space, Daniel looked over and saw Lyra collapse in her seat. Smoke rose from her arm. It had overheated, but she smiled faintly. "See, not broken." Daniel knelt beside her. "You shouldn't have done that." "You could have saved us," she interrupted gently. "I wanted to." He wanted to scold her, but the warmth in her voice stopped him. Instead, he smiled weakly. "Then I guess I owe you one." They drifted for hours, letting the engines cool. Outside, the stars shimmered like a sea of diamonds. Inside, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hum of life support. Lyra finally spoke again. "Daniel, when ship crashed, why you stayed? You could go. Leave me." He looked out at the stars before answering. "Because I saw someone who needed help. Because I'm tired of watching people break things and never fix them." Her silver eyes softened. "Then maybe we fix each other." The words hit him deeper than he expected. He turned away, pretending to check the controls. "Maybe we do." Days passed as they traveled from one system to another, always hiding, always moving. They traded with smugglers for food and fuel using fake IDs. Lyra learned fast. How to speak full sentences in English, how to pilot when Daniel slept, even how to make small jokes about human habits. But danger followed them. News broadcasts labeled Daniel Reeves a traitor. His face appeared on wanted lists across the outer colonies. "Human deserter aiding alien fugitive," the caption said. Bounty hunters began asking questions. One night, while they rested at a small refueling outpost hidden in a dust cloud, Daniel caught sight of a shadowed figure approaching their dock. He grabbed his pistol and motioned Lyra to stay behind. The figure stepped into the light, an armored bounty tracker, visor glowing red. "You're Captain Reeves," the man said through static. "Orders are to bring you in, alive if possible." Daniel aimed carefully. "Walk away," the tracker raised his blaster. Before he could fire, Lyra appeared behind Daniel, her arm shining with energy. She unleashed a short pulse that knocked the blaster out of the man's hand and sent him sprawling. Daniel didn't kill him. He just took the man's ship parts and left him unconscious. When they flew off again, Daniel turned to Lyra. "You didn't have to do that." She smiled faintly. "You saved me first. Now I save you," he couldn't argue. There was something about her that reminded him what it meant to care. Something human that no rulebook could erase. They spent the next few weeks on the run, but also searching. Lyra began remembering pieces of her past, the facility where she had been tested, the scientists who recorded her pain, the symbols on the walls. Daniel helped her trace those coordinates through old star charts. It led to a system called Epsilon 13, near a region known as the Silent Gate. I think that's where they made me, she whispered. Daniel looked at her determined face. Then that's where we'll go. Maybe we'll find the truth. Their journey took them through the Ember Belt, a deadly region of red asteroids. Halfway through, a human command cruiser intercepted their signal. It demanded surrender. Daniel's jaw tightened. If they catch us, they'll tear her apart. He activated manual control. Hang on. The cruiser fired. Their ship shuddered as energy blasts tore through the outer hull. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The fuel core was overheating. Daniel, Lyra shouted. The ship will break apart. Then we'll give them something to chase, he said. He locked her seat harness and ran to the engine bay. The heat was unbearable, but he manually rerouted the fuel lines, overriding the computer's safety locks. Get to the escape pod, he called. She shook her head, tears forming. No, you come too. Go, Lyra. That's an order. But she refused. Instead, she followed him into the engine bay, her glowing hand merging with the overheated systems. Together, they triggered the emergency burn. The engines exploded outward in a massive shockwave that sent their crippled ship flying away from the cruiser at impossible speed. When they finally stabilized, the cruiser was gone, lost behind a wall of debris. The ship was damaged but alive, like them. Daniel slumped in his chair, exhausted. Lyra looked at him, her face pale but calm. You could leave me, she said softly. But you didn't, he smiled weakly. Not in my nature. She reached out, touching his hand. Then I walked beside you always. Outside, the stars of the Ember Belt glowed like rivers of fire, lighting their faces with red and gold. Two fugitives, one human, one alien, fleeing from two empires bound by a promise stronger than fear. And for the first time, Daniel didn't feel like a soldier or a fugitive. He felt like someone finally doing what was right. The damaged shuttle drifted for hours through cold space. Sparks flickered along the walls while the engines gave off a slow metallic hum. Daniel Reeves sat in silence, his hands still shaking after the explosion that saved them. Beside him, Lyra lay resting with her eyes half closed, her silver skin faintly glowing in the dark. He checked the scanners. No ships behind them. They had escaped the cruiser, but their power reserves were almost gone. The navigation system flickered and showed only one nearby destination, Epsilon 13, the system from Lyra's memories. It was dangerous and abandoned, but they had no other choice. Daniel turned to her. We can reach it in one jump if we burn the last of our fuel. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. Then we go. That place. It's where I began, he nodded. And maybe where we end this. The engine screamed as he forced them into one last hyperspace jump. The stars stretched into long white lines, then collapsed again as they dropped out of light speed. Before them hung a dead world, dark, scarred, covered with the remains of old laboratories and broken satellites. This is it, Daniel said quietly. Lyra looked out the window, her face unreadable. I remember pain here, she whispered, but also voices, others like me. They landed near a collapsed facility half buried in dust. The air was thin, cold, and filled with floating ash. Daniel grabbed his weapon and a flashlight. Lyra followed silently, her glowing arm lighting the path ahead. Inside, the corridors were littered with broken machines and rusted doors marked with both Human Command and Vashani Science Authority symbols. She touched one of the walls. I know this place. Daniel scanned the terminal nearby. There's still power in the lower levels. They forced open a door and descended a spiral stairway. As they reached the basement, lights flickered on by themselves. Lyra stepped forward, and the walls seemed to recognize her presence. Holographic screens appeared, showing files and images. Daniel's heart sank as he saw them. Rows of young aliens and humans in cryopods used as test subjects. He read the log entries, Project Unison. Goal: combine human adaptability with Vashani biostructure. Lyra stood frozen. They called us subjects, but we were children. Her voice trembled.
Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder.
We'll make them remember what they did. He downloaded all the files into his wrist chip, gathering evidence of the crimes. Then the facility alarm started to ring. Someone had noticed their presence. From the main corridor, automated security drones powered up, their eyes glowing red. Daniel raised his rifle and fired short bursts, hitting the first wave. Sparks filled the air.
Keep behind me,
he shouted, but Lyra stepped forward instead. Her biotech arm glowed brighter. spreading light across the hall. She reached out and the drones stopped moving, frozen mid-air as if held by invisible strings.
"They were made by my code," she said softly.
"They will listen to me now." With a wave of her hand, the drones powered down and fell to the floor. The alarms faded to silence. They reached the control room at the center of the facility. A large window overlooked the planet's surface. Beyond it, a huge ancient structure rose from the dust, a circular gate of stone and metal. "Epsilon Gate," Daniel whispered. "That's what this system is named after." Lyra looked at the gate with fear and awe. "It leads to a network, to data hidden beyond normal space. They stored everything there, every experiment, every name, every lie." Daniel activated the console. "Can you open it?" She nodded slowly. "I can try." Her fingers touched the holographic controls and energy lines lit up across the floor. The gate outside began to glow, spinning slowly as if waking from centuries of sleep. But before the process could complete, another alarm sounded, this one deeper, sharper. A voice echoed through the speakers. "Unauthorized activation detected. Purge sequence initiated," Daniel cursed under his breath. "They built a failsafe." Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of determination. "I can stop it, but I must link completely." "It will hurt." He stepped closer. "Lyra, no. If it damages your system, you could—" She smiled faintly. "You refuse to leave me broken. Let me return the promise." Before he could stop her, she connected her arm directly to the central terminal. Light exploded across the room as streams of code rushed through her body. She screamed once, not from pain, but from the surge of memories flooding her mind. Every experiment, every captive, every cry that had echoed in these halls. Daniel held her steady, shouting over the noise, "You can do it. Stay with me." "I see them," she whispered, "so many. They want to be free." Outside, the Epsilon Gate opened completely, sending waves of blue energy into the sky. The purge drones that had been flying toward them froze mid-air and disintegrated. The gate projected thousands of data streams into orbit, transmitting the truth across the galaxy. Names of those responsible, lists of victims, full evidence of the forbidden experiments. From human colonies to Vishani worlds, the transmissions appeared on every major network. Leaders watched in silence as their crimes were laid bare. The power surge finally stopped. The gate dimmed. Smoke filled the control room. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her glowing arm flickering. Daniel caught her before she fell completely. "Lyra, talk to me," he said, voice breaking. Her breathing was weak but steady. "It's done," she whispered. "They will know." "You did it," Daniel said, holding her close. "You ended it." Outside the window, dawn rose over the planet's scarred horizon. For the first time, light touched the Epsilon Gate without shadows. Hours later, a transmission came through their comms. A voice from the Galactic Council, a mixture of disbelief and regret. "Captain Reeves, this is Council Command. We have received the data. You and the Vishani survivor will be granted full protection. The truth has shaken both empires. Return home." Daniel looked down at Lyra, who was resting peacefully in his arms. "Home," he repeated softly. "Maybe we finally have one." When she opened her eyes again, the silver in them was brighter than ever. "You didn't leave me broken," she said weakly. "Now I can walk beside you," he smiled. "Then let's walk together." They left the ruined lab behind and boarded their ship once more. As the engine started, Lyra gazed at the fading gate. "Do you think they'll change?" she asked. Daniel thought for a long moment. "Maybe not all at once, but someone will remember us. Someone will do better. That's enough." As they flew away, the planet of Epsilon 13 shrank into a small point of light behind them. The stars opened ahead, endless and bright. For the first time in many years, Daniel felt peace instead of duty. Lyra sat beside him, her newly healed arm faintly glowing as she touched the console. "Where do we go now?" he smiled. "Anywhere the stars take us." They watched the horizon together as the ship accelerated into hyperspace. Two survivors, bound not by orders or blood, but by a promise of hope. Across the galaxy, people whispered of them. The human soldier who refused to abandon compassion, and the alien girl who rose from her pain to walk beside him. In time, their story became more than legend. It became proof that even in a universe filled with war and fear, kindness could still light the darkest corner of the stars. And wherever the stars burned, their names traveled with the wind of history. Daniel Reeves and Lyra of the Vishani. The ones who refused to let the other remain broken, and who walked forward together into the dawn of a new age.